audio shit is like a total fucking mystery to me. I'm still working. I'm trying to find a way that I can talk conversationally into a microphone and it's not like super fucking quiet. For some reason, that's a really hard thing to do. I don't know if it's a sound card issue or what, but I'm fucking working on it, guys. I am. So I don't have to, shout into microphones right up next to my mouth, because that's not really the way I talk usually, so it doesn't feel natural. It's a little weird. That's what I'm saying. And, obviously using different recording devices, like it's amazing the sound quality I can get from my phone, but the problem with my phone is it picks up fucking everything. It doesn't just pick up me. It picks up everything that's around me, and that's not really good either. So what I need is a nice, good quality, focused audio solution that I can just talk into, and I don't have to fucking play with the volume. Apparently that's not something that you can just do. It takes hard work. And that's what I do in the background, kids. Some of it, not all of it. I mean, I don't spend my whole waking hour because I'm only up 1 hour. No, I don't spend all of my waking hours obsessed with this, but it's something that does concern me. And really, at this point, doesn't seem like it should be that fucking complicated. It really feels like this is way harder than it should be. Everyone else online that I see record audio does it fucking effortlessly. I don't know if you've used Audacity, but there's this waveform that pops up that shows you how loud your voice is compared to, other sounds that you might record. And, when I record the songs that I do, for example, that shit is fucking up and down, fills the whole goddamn screen, but my voice barely, and I am not talking quietly right now, it barely registers, and I don't fucking understand. I'm not an audio engineer, so obviously there's things that are going on that I don't understand. But it's really irritating to me that my $15 webcam microphone picks up way more than my $100 subtle vocal microphone. It just irritates me. This is my problem. I don't know why I'm making it yours, but I guess this is part of what this podcast is just me getting it out, letting it out, just talking about it. Ugh. So I got an interview for a training job on Monday. A job that I've already done successfully several times, but for some reason I still have to interview for. It's fucking exhausting. I hate it. And it's not like I'm worried that I'm not going to get it because I'm a badass and I can do anything, but it's just irritating that I have to fucking do it because I've been a trainer. I have 2.5 at least, if not more, years of training experience. I shouldn't have to interview for something that I already know I can do, that I've already done successfully. They should just say, hey, Matt, you want to do this again? And I say yes. And that should be the end of the interview. Ugh. Fucking hate this shit. So that's part of why I'm bitching about things. Because, I don't... Because it's always in the back of my mind, and again, I know I'm going to do fine. Or who knows, maybe I'll choke this time. It's always a possibility. Hasn't happened so far. There's only been one job I've ever interviewed for that I haven't gotten. And that was right after I got fired from another job for not showing up. So, obviously, they had some issues with me. But literally every other job I've interviewed for, I've gotten. So, that tells you just how charismatic and great I am. Yes. But, none of that has anything to do with anything. So I watched, recently watched the show Powerless again, which only lasted like half a season. I think it was a 10 or 11 episode run, and they only aired 7 or 8 episodes. The last 3 I had to hunt down because they were never aired on regular TV. Such a fucking brilliant show. If you haven't seen it, I don't know if there's any medium on which you can find it anymore. All my stuff is obtained legally, so I don't know what to tell you. But it's awesome. It's about this group of people who work at Wayne Enterprises, specifically the division, their Wayne Tech Security division. So they design products to help regular people defend against superheroes, and they're just regular dudes that live in the world of the DC universe. So there's all sorts of crazy shit happening in the background that they all have to deal with. Train gets shut down because some crazy supervillain is bombing the train tracks. Just I don't know, all sorts of random ass shit. I don't know. I really, when I heard the concept, I was like, yes, that's the show that I've been waiting for. And when I saw it, I loved it. It's funny. It's got a great cast. I don't know if you know Danny Pudi or Ron Funches, but you should. Both of them are really hilarious. The lead girl, Emily, is her character's name. I can't remember the actress who plays her, but she's so delightful and just amazing. You cannot help but be pulled in by her. And that's it's a great show. I wish it hadn't been canceled. Very few shows I got emotionally invested in that actually got canceled in the first season. Like, most of the time I come in late, I already know it's been canceled, so I don't have that emotional investment. It's not probably the only show I've ever come in after it's been canceled and wish it had never been canceled is Lie to Me. But I'll talk about that another day, because I've actually got kind of a weird thing with Tim Roth, who's the starring character of that show. And he can be a whole episode in and of himself. It's just a fucking amazing actor who's, he's right there with Michael Fassbender. I mean, as one of the greatest actors of all time. But one thing I haven't talked about on this show, really, which is surprising to me, because it's such a big part of my life, or at least I don't know, it used to. It's been hard since the move, but it's still something that I love and something that I'm obsessed with, and something that I keep focusing on, and hopefully one day I will find a good group of board gamers in the Phoenix area. But until then, I keep talking into the night in my podcast, and I bemoan my fate. It's my mummy impression. It's pretty terrible, I know. I don't do impressions. I don't drink wine. All right. Anyway, so board gaming. That's like a big thing. Something that I'm really into. And it's hard to justify why, and also it's hard to say board gaming without launching into a 5-minute explanation of what you actually mean. Because you can say to somebody, yeah, man, I'm a big fan of board games. And they're like, oh, me too, dude. I've got this big collection. I got Life. I got Risk. I got Monopoly. I got Clue. I got yada, yada. Stop talking. No. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a game where the sole mechanic is rolling dice. unless that game is a dice rolling game in which the dice are the mechanic. See, Clue has a bit of strategy to it, a bit. It's probably the closest to a real board game, and real is in capital letters, that you can get, from the Milton Bradley Parker Brothers set. Monopoly, all it is, you just roll dice and do what the dice tell you to do. Do I buy it? Do I not? Do I have the money? What does it matter? Doesn't matter. There's very little strategy to Monopoly, especially if you add in free parking. The free parking rule. But that's the only way it gets exciting. Otherwise, the game takes 12 hours, and it's just not fun. Risk, I suppose, does have some levels of strategy to it. Absolutely. But the war games that I've played compared to that make Risk look like a big ass joke. Like, just really not worth the time and effort that you're going to put into it. Now, you want to see a war game, I can give you a couple of really good examples. Now, based on how much time you have, you got a couple of different levels you can go for here. Like, if you want a super realistic depiction of war, head-on-head, people versus people, there's a game called Paths of Glory. I personally haven't had the chance to play it, but it's by a company called GMT, and they're kind of the experts in the whole war game scenario. And that's the one that's going to be your bread and butter. That's the apex. That's your goal. That's what you're going for if you're like, I want to be a serious war gamer. Paths of Glory. That's where you're going. But you get a couple of roads, a couple of stepping stones you can go to get there. You can start with something simple. There's games called Battle Lore games. Those are more about tactics versus strategy, if you know what I'm saying. You're moving individual units on a small battlefield, and it's a good idea because it gets you to use cards to control your actions, but then you use those cards to decide which units you're going to affect, which units you're going to move. Do I want to move my archers? Do I want to move my cavalry? Which is going to be most advantageous at this moment? And I've got a goal I got to get to, and this guy's got his goal, so I got to focus on mine, but I've also got to stop him from getting to his. So cavalry, pretty mobile. I can get those fuckers back in the fight so that they can slow him down. I'll bring my archers up on the sides so they can move towards that goal, and if they need to, they can hit at range. Like, that's the type of shit that we're thinking, right? So a couple of different types of versions of that shit out there. There's Memoir 44, which is pretty straightforward. It's World War II themed, so it's all Germans and Allies fighting each other. No Japanese. It's all European-based. And it's pretty solid. There's a board game version, obviously, but there's a version on Steam. If you ever want to check that out, if you're a computer nerd, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that one's pretty solid. There's if you want to get a bit more advanced, Fantasy Flight has a Game of Thrones version called War of Westeros. I played that with my brother a couple of times. A big fan of that. They have a little different mechanic than a lot of the other games do. Rather than a card affecting a particular region, usually it's left flank, right flank, or middle. That's the standard. In the Fantasy Flight version, you actually target a particular leader on the battlefield, and he has a range of units that he can activate. So that's pretty cool. And then there's also, if you want to get more advanced, there's the Commands and Colors series. They have ancient Roman, Greek themed ones. They have Napoleonics, which is one of the most popular, which is, of course, the Napoleonic War. And yeah, just a lot of good stuff in the battle lore. Like, there's a bunch of them. They're all pretty much the same, just, different levels of complexity. So find something that you're interested in, grab it, and play it. I recommend that. But yeah, war games come in all shapes and sizes. They get a bit more complex if you want to actually have, rather than a tactics-based thing where you just got a bunch of individual units, you're talking about moving armies across a grand battlefield. There's a bunch of different options for that too. A couple of my favorites, if you want a quicker version of that type of war game, you've got We the People, that's what it used to be called. You can't find We the People anymore, but there's a game called Washington's War, which is also, I believe, by GMT, which is the same game. It's just reskinned. And that, if you're actually good on the rules, you can do that game in 90 minutes to 2 hours. You can breeze right through it, and it's good fun. And it teaches you about things like territory control and army management, and just again, card driven based. That's most of them are. And in that game, rather than focusing on minuscule battles where you've got 5 to 10 units that are clashing against each other, you've got the whole eastern seaboard. You've got all original 13 colonies from Georgia on up to Maine. You've got to deal with a bunch of shit, and you've got as the British Army, of course. You've got to control ports, because that's how your units land, because they're all coming from merry old England. And as the Americans, you're strapped for cash, and you've got to keep raising up your Minutemen and keep that shit going. But combat's all card driven for the most part. You've got your army size, which gives you bonuses, but then you've got cards which you've got flank cards, and you've got rush cards, and you've got, so basically every card, a right flank, a left flank, can be matched with another card of the same type. So if I right flank, you right flank, nothing happens. Your basic goal is you can play a certain number of cards based on your army, and or I might be thinking of Hannibal. Doesn't matter. Let's say I'm talking about Hannibal and I'm talking about Washington's War. Both pretty much the same thing. But anyway, so your goal is to play a card that your opponent cannot outmaneuver. But there are certain cards that, if you play them as matching cards, turns the tide of the battle. So instead of attacking, suddenly you become the defender. They're counterattacking, and you have to defend against that. So it's pretty interesting. All around, I like it. I enjoy it. It's good. It's good stuff. War games. So yeah, there's Washington's War, which is American Revolution. There's another game based on that same system called Hannibal, which is obviously the second or third Peloponnesian War. I can't remember which one. It's when Hannibal rides the elephants over the Alps and all that business. So it's all in the Mediterranean as opposed to, the 13 original colonies. But the mechanics are the same. You're trying to, at one time, you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent with armies, because that's how you really win. But at the same time, you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent with politics, right? So you've got these territories that you control, and you're spreading your influence out from them in order to gain more territory, which gives you more bonuses, makes it easier for your armies to move freely throughout the lands. So, it's good stuff. I tell you, man, I love me some wargaming. I mean, I love board games of all types. Euro games and fucking auction games and, you know, just stupid little dice rolly fucking Monsters in New York games and just all sorts of stuff. I like it all. I'll play it all when it comes down to it, but my favorite is the war games. So one of my other favorite war games, other than Washington's War, is War of the Ring, which that title should spark your interest if you are a fantasy fan, a man or woman who loves the universe that J.R.R. Tolkien created. War of the Ring, that is the battle to decide the fate of Middle-earth. One of the best examples of what's called an asymmetrical board game. So as the Dark Lord, Sauron, which one character plays, you are trying literally to take over as much territory as you possibly can. That is your goal. That's what you want to happen. That's what is bound to happen. Most of the games I played, the Dark Lord wins because it's not easy to defeat the Dark Lord. You know, nor should it be. Not to say that the good doesn't have some powers. So that's your goal as the Dark Lord. Control the world. Destroy and take over as much territory as you possibly can. As the other player, the Fellowship, or the light side, however you look at it, your goal is to get the ring to Mordor and get it to Mount Doom and destroy it. Now, that's not to say that that's the only way to win. As the light side, if you are able to defeat enough of the evil armies, then you can win. But the light side's armies are limited. That is to say, every time you lose a unit, it's out of the game. You'll never see it again. Whereas if Sauron loses a unit, it goes back in his reinforcements. He can bring it back later. So you are seriously outclassed as far as armies go. Your best hope is to defend as long as possible, hold out for that great victory when the ring is dropped in Mount Doom. Now, there's a lot of interesting mechanics in this game. Like, for example, as the ring bearers, as the Fellowship, you move secretly. So you have the last known location of the Fellowship, which in this game starts in Rivendell. So break out your map of Middle-earth, you nerds, because I know you have one. And that's where we start. And our goal is to get to Mount Doom. All right. So each area is a region. You know, there's a bunch of different regions that you move through. Now, what it is you have the last known location of the Fellowship, but you don't know. So you know they've moved, say, 3 spaces, because I have a track that shows you how many spaces I've moved. But you don't know in which direction I've moved, where I've gone, what's happening. Oh, because it's secret movement, right? And I've also got members of the Fellowship. You know, I got Legolas, I got Gimli, I got Aragorn, I got all of that shit. I can break them off and have them go on separate adventures. But I still got the Fellowship. I still got Frodo and the ring moving ever closer to Mordor. Now, you can't just do whatever you want every turn you get. That's the trick of it. You've got a certain number of dice You roll them, and that determines the type of actions you can take. You can take like leadership actions, which move your important characters, or your Nazgul, as the Sauron character has plenty of. You've got eyeballs, which lets you hunt for the ring if that's what you want to do. Because if you find the ring, then you can corrupt Frodo. And if Frodo reaches enough corruption, then he becomes evil. He takes the ring for himself, and Sauron can find him and destroy him. So, as you're running secretly through the forests, you can gain corruption points, which leads you closer to the dark side. But there's also ways to heal corruption if you find yourself in whatever Lady Galadriel's forest was. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Or in other towns, or certain tiles that you can get added that will counter the effects of corruption that you've already experienced. So yeah, it's a toe the line sort of game. Basically, as the light side, as the Fellowship, you are holding on as long as you can, shoring up your defenses. Gondor's gonna fall. Don't try to hold on to Gondor for too long. Do your best, but you might be better served letting Gondor fall and move your units so that they can, have a harder road into Rohan. Something to consider in the future. But yeah, Gondor's going to fall. It's going to happen. Unless you are really lucky or a better strategic mind than I am. Oh, God, it's so cool, though. It's fun. And you've got little event cards that'll have things happen, and you've got little creatures and monsters on your side. As the Sauron, for example, you've got the mouth of Sauron, that crazy lieutenant dude, and you've got Saruman in the Black Tower as the enemy, as the enemy of Sauron. Okay, as the Fellowship. Yeah, you've got, like I said, you've got Legolas, you've got Gandalf, you've got all of those guys, you've got Smeagol. And of course, Samwise is always with Frodo. You can never separate Samwise and Frodo. They're the same character, same piece. So that's cool. And yeah, there's different events that happen. If, for example, there's one called the Ents Attack that you can play. If Saruman is in the Black Tower, if the Sauron player has brought him onto the battlefield, and there's certain bonuses he gets for doing that, then you can play that card, and on a pretty easy dice roll, he gets wiped out. The whole area gets wiped out. Anyone who's there is dead because, the Ents flood the whole shit. They all die. So there's that game. There's another game I'm not going to get into because I haven't really played it, unfortunately. I have it, never played it, which is kind of to my shame. It's the Battle of the Five Armies. So it's like War of the Ring, but it's from the Hobbit book, and it's the Five Armies. So you're either the elves, humans, dwarves, and eagles, or you're the other side, the orcs and the bats. The bats are part of the orc army, but the eagles are like flying units that can do a lot of bullshit stuff, and the orcs have the bats that can fly around and do some bullshit stuff. So it's pretty interesting. I've read the rules once. I never got a chance to play it because, life happens, and, other things can become priorities. But one of these days, I have it. I'm going to play it. So that's kind of your medium war games. Like I said, Paths of Glory is kind of where your aspirations are going if you want to play like serious war games. There's a couple of others. There's a lot of block games that are pretty solid. I have a game called Crusader Rex, which is set in the third or second Crusade. I can't remember which one. But basically, you've got a bunch of fortresses that you need to control in order to win the game. And one guy plays the European invaders. The other guy plays the Saracens, the defenders, so to speak, of the Holy Land. And the Europeans tend to have sparse units, but they're more powerful. The Saracens tend to have more units, but they're easier to kill. So it's kind of, that sort of dichotomy. Again, card-driven. Kind of unique thing about this game is it's got only a couple of different actions that you can do. You've got a card that lets you move units around, or you've got an event. You never can do really both. And there is one event that's like a war where you can attack. And then a lot of these older games, games that are set, a lot of these games that are set in olden times, like Crusader Rex, another one, which is also a block game called Hammer of the Scots, which is a pretty big, pretty popular from back in the day. They have what's called a winter season. Like, we think of winter, especially those of us who live in the desert, as just like, another season. Thankfully, one that's not hot. Doesn't mean anything to us. But in the olden times, before engines and, paved roads and whatnot, winter was a pretty fucked up time. Roads would get iced over and closed in, and you would be trapped in your castle for, weeks, if not months on end. You'd have to provision. So there's no time to really run around and wage war. Everyone's just trying to survive the winter. That's how horrible it is. So a lot of these games, like Hammer of the Scots or Crusader Rex, will have a winter season where not a lot happens, where you're basically consolidating your armies, preparing for the spring. And if you didn't properly prepare for the winter, well, some of your armies are going to freeze to death. And that's something you're just going to have to deal with. War games. Good times. Like, just good times. Couple of honorable mentions that I'll drop in there. There's a game called Wilderness War, which is about the French-Indian War, I believe is what it's called, which pre-Revolutionary War, British and French forces that had allied with certain different Native American tribes had a battle to control certain territories here in the U.S. And they made a pretty interesting game on that one. And then I think honorable mention will go to Twilight Struggle, which is not... It's a Cold War game, is what it is. It's not a war game. It's card-driven, territory control, just like a lot of war games are, but you're not actually moving units on a field. You're spreading influence, either U.S. or Russian influence throughout the world, and using that to have other nations do your bidding, essentially. And that's probably, probably. That's one of my favorite games ever. It's unforgiving in mistakes, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it's definitely not the most difficult game I've ever played. I would say, as a gamer, if you feel that you're comfortable with all the games that you've played and you want to branch out and try something complicated, and you want to see if that world is right for you, because if it is, there's a whole nother genre of games that open up if that becomes the case. But I think Twilight Struggle is a good place to start. If you find you don't like it, but there are things that interest you about it, then war games are the place for you to check out. Breeze into it. Try some Battle Lore. Try some, you know, there's thousands that I haven't even mentioned, and I don't even know half of them. But, try any game that I've listed here is good. If you find that you love it, then hey, dive in. Find yourself a war game. Find yourself a war game buddy. And war game the fuck out. Because you find you don't like it, you hate everything about it, then that's fine. There's other realms of gaming to explore, and I'll discuss those at later times. We haven't talked about 4X games, and those are fantastic. We haven't talked about Euro games. We haven't talked about Ameritrash. Like, there is 1,000 ways that we can go with this. And you know what? If all you need is Monopoly to be happy, then God bless you. Go for it. Monopoly your brains out. I'm not going to fucking stop you, and I'm not going to denigrate you because you happen to enjoy that. That is fine. I played many, many hours of Monopoly in my day, so I really can't fault you on that. Though I got bored of the regular game and made my own rules, and, we exploited the game and blah, blah, blah. Changed it up. Anyway, that's not important. If that's what makes you happy, do it, because that's really what life is about. At the end of the day, we all gonna die, and even if for some reason we find a way to survive, the planet's gonna explode. So, I mean, that sun, it's just gonna keep getting bigger. It's gonna swallow up the solar system. What can we really do about it? Nothing. But in the meantime, we might as well have some fun, play some fucking board games. So I'll talk about more stuff in the future, shit that I'm into, because I've been leaning pretty heavy into the comic books thing. So that's probably, I'll shift my focus, talk about some more board game stuff next time. Still waiting for some song suggestions, anytime. Or, maybe you guys just fucking hate my voice. And tell me that too, because I'll stop singing if I'm really that bad. I always thought I was okay. I never pictured myself as a Clay Aiken or anything, but I think I'm all right. And anytime, again, you want to hear my thoughts about anything, because I don't have a specific format. I don't have a thing that I talk about. I talk about what I'm interested in. But if there's something that you're interested in that you'd like to hear my thoughts on, absolutely let me know. Drop something in the comments. If you want to be a bit more clandestine about it, you can always email me at maximus3116@gmail.com. Again, maximus3116@gmail.com. And, if not, who gives a shit? I'll talk about whatever the fuck I want anyway. So, it's all good. So, as always, I love you guys. Thanks for coming back. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.